We shouldn't talk about this may contain graphic descriptions and/or explicit content that may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everybody. I'm Key,
And I'm V.
and this is We Shouldn't Talk About This.
Hello, Key.
V, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm surviving. Surviving what, you ask? I'm surviving being ghosted.
Ghosted? By whom?
Ghosted by the one and only V.
What?
Now,
Like, 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 like singular? Like this V?
if you are a member of the Facebook group, you would have seen a post in the last few days that said, "Hey, you guys, I totally got ghosted by V. One like, and I'll share my story." And I got that one like. That one like was actually me, but I did get two additional likes, so it counts.
Okay, I'm following.
So I'm going to share my harrowing story this week of how I survived being ghosted by the one person I never thought that would ghost me. Never. It's going to get a little emotional, but in the end, I did survive. So this is a tale of survival, not a tale of, tragedy, but of triumph.
Wow. On this week's episode, and we shouldn't talk about this, we dive into the deep, depressing story that is Key being ghosted by V.
Gather around, children. It's time for a tale of survival.
So,
I'm glad my pain makes you laugh.
so, are we gonna get into this now? Because I'm really lost here.
Oh, so you don't even remember ghosting me. Wow, okay.
I
So
don't.
I'll take you back to Saturday when we were talking to each other, and we were like, "Hey, we're going to record tomorrow, 6 o'clock ish." And you were like, "Yeah, that works." I was like, "Okay, cool, that works for me as well." So Sunday, 6 o'clock rolls around. I'm waiting. I have my computer ready, my phone. I'm ready with my headset on, and nothing. And I was like, "Okay, man, I'm really kind of hungry, so I hope he logs in pretty soon." Nothing. So 7:45. Actually, I take that back. At 7:43, I text you and was like, "Hey, are we still recording today?" Question mark. Emoji face. "No, I'm out. I totally forgot," was the response 2 minutes later.
I don't have an excuse for that. I totally forgot.
So that's how you ghosted me. Completely forgot about my existence. And I sat for an hour and 45 minutes waiting when I could have been cooking, anything. I could have went to the grocery store. Grocery stores close early now because of the corona.
Wow, this is a harrowing tale of triumph right here. I am
It,
glad you made it to this Friday at 6:30 p.m. that we are now recording.
I mean, I could see anybody else possibly doing this, but one of my top three nephews, one of the top three, like, it would have never, ever, ever occurred to me that I could be hurt this deeply by someone I love so much.
Well, is there any way I can make this up to you?
Um, you could buy me a new bread maker because mine just flew off the counter while it was making bread. So, yeah, I expect to see a new bread maker under the Christmas tree this year.
I thought bread was just made from like wheat and water and flour. I didn't know there were machines that can produce bread at will. Like
It can. It can make
like
dough, so you can make
asexually
pizza.
produce wet bread? That's crazy.
I mean, you have to put your ingredients in it.
Oh, okay. I see now.
You know, I had to go out and buy bread flour and
Hmm.
whatnot. But yes, okay, so you have 5 months to save up for a bread maker, and then I think I can put this being ghosted to rest.
Put it to rest. What if I ghost you again before then? Then what?
Then I'll have to find another appliance that'll, help smooth it over.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah.
So apologies are not good enough.
No, we're appliances now.
Well,
You're
you know,
grown now. You have a job.
says you. So, um, so being ghosted is very similar, but not as serious as people going missing.
That is true. I mean, sometimes you think you've been ghosted and the person is actually just missing.
And then you feel really guilty for like, telling people about how selfish and like, not a good friend that person was. But in
Right,
actuality, they can't help what's going on.
right. Now, my story today is not more so of a person ghosting another person, but they're missing all the same. And to this day, it's still a mystery. This is another missing persons who are still missing,
A chapter two, if you will.
if you will. Now, mine is a very famous case from Australia, and I think that means I should go first. No, mine is good. You go first.
Okay. Like mine is any less good. Let's
No,
see
I have a
then.
feeling that when you hear my story, you're going to be so shocked that, you know, you just won't be able to speak anymore.
Oh wow, I'll be left speechless.
Yes.
I don't know if that's possible, but we can check it out.
I'll tell
After
you why. Because not one, not two, but three people go missing.
a trifecta of people go missing.
Hmm. But let's hear your story.
All right. Gather round, children. It's time for Tell a Crime. Joshua Powell met Susan Cox, a classmate at his Latter day Saints Institute of Religion course, during a dinner party at his Tacoma apartment in November 2000. The two began a relationship eventually. The two began a relationship and eventually married in April of 2001. Joshua being 25, Susan being 19. Now, what makes this part important is that Susan is Joshua's first girl that ever gave him a fair chance, and Joshua is Susan's first boyfriend. But they began dating in November of 2000. He proposed to her in February of 2001, and they got married in April of 2001.
And she was 19.
She was 19.
Oh.
She, at the time, she also was she was also in cosmetology school and working at the jewelry section in JCPenney. And Joshua went to her job and was like, hey, baby, I'm gonna get something nice for my mom for her birthday. And so, like, I just want to get your suggestion on it. And she picked out, well, going through everything, all of the talking and everything, she picked out a ring and she bought it with her, like, under her discount at
Hmm.
at the store, and that was the ring he proposed to her with. So she picked out her own ring, helped pay for it, and married this guy.
And he used her discount without telling her? That rat bastard. I hope he's the one that goes missing.
Oh my gosh, Joshua has done a lot. So let's give you a little history on him. Joshua Powell was born January 20th, 1976, to Stephen and Terry Powell, a Mormon family in Puyallup, Washington. Joshua's parents had a very, very, very dysfunctional marriage, largely due to his father's dis disaffection with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church. So in the marriage of uh, LDS religion, you're married eternally. So divorces are a thing that should never even exist in your life. You're
So
married to
they can't even
someone,
cross your mind.
you can't cross your mind. You're married to someone in the present until death, and when you reach the afterlife, you're still married to that person, like for an eternity.
That's a raw deal. I mean, what if you're just holding on just because
Oh my
you're
gosh,
like,
like
"Ooh,
really?
once I die, I'm over. When this is over, I'm free."
Right. The
Then you get
problem
to heaven like, "Ooh,
the
okay."
problem the problem with this is, and I think it actually ties back to Joshua, was that Stephen married Terry, but he was a very disturbed and sexual individual. He had a journal, and he would write stories in it about how incredibly hot his neighbor's wife was, and that if her husband died, he would happily take her in as a plural wife.
Whoa.
But even more disturbing, he had entries about his oldest daughter and how seeing her walk around in a t-shirt and panties drove him wild. His
Okay,
under
that's disgusting.
Yeah, his like 15 something year old daughter is incredibly disturbing. And because of his I don't give a fuck attitude, he refused to teach and enforce limits on certain behaviors. Joshua, as a teenager, was able to view porn. He killed his little sister's gerbils, and he threatened his mom on constant occasions, telling her that wish she would just die. And he also attempted suicide on at least one occasion.
Wow, that's like all over the map though.
A very troubled youth for Joshua.
Very much so.
So Joshua, in 1998, around 21, 22 years old, he began living in Seattle, and he went to the University of Washington. At this school, he met Catherine, who was also in a Latter-day Saints ward. They moved in together. They moved into an apartment together in secret because that's something you don't do until marriage, of course. And right after they moved into the apartment, Joshua became incredibly possessive of her. When she was at work one day, her financial aid check came in the mail. He took the check, put it in his account, never told her about it, and that hit has stayed on her credit for her life, and she never got to use that money for school.
Oh, dang it, he's an asshole.
Yeah, and he was incredibly controlling. She couldn't go anywhere without him, not even see her own family. And then one day, she had to go visit a friend in Utah, and she called Joshua up and broke up with him over the phone and said that she would not be returning to Seattle.
Good for her. I'm glad she got out. Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
So I mainly said that Susan was his first chance of love because Catherine, while she did like him, she wasn't like really attracted to him, and she's kind of like just seeing how it was to have a boyfriend really. And when she started seeing how cruel and judgmental Joshua was, that just really tore her apart from wanting to be with him, but she didn't know how to leave him without fear, like fear of being hurt by him. So that's why she did it long distance over the phone. Prior to this, going through high school and everything, Joshua had these immediate love at first sight reactions to women, and they would always friend zone him and always just say like, you're so sweet, you're so nice, but don't feel the same way about you. He would constantly write letters to him about how beautiful they are, how he wants to spend the rest of his life with them, without even knowing these girls. He just do it immediately to try to, I don't know, I guess just steal that back.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, it never seemed like it was warranted like the correct way, because at one point he was crazy in love with this Spanish girl, and he would go to her house and like drop her off flowers and give her chocolates, stuff like that. And then one day she was like, okay, like you keep coming to my house without asking or without warning, and my parents don't like it. Like this isn't cool. Don't do this anymore. And then of course she eventually told him that she wasn't into him because she tried to friend zone him before, but he wasn't getting the picture. So you know what Joshua does?
I'm thinking he doesn't take it well.
He takes it well, but he goes right to her little sister, confessing the same love for her, showing up to the house and trying to give her things.
Oh, ew, he is disgusting.
Yeah, he was incredibly crazy. And Susan is actually the younger sister of one of his friends, whom at he went to their house, and Susan was playing piano. Susan was about 11 years old, and in Joshua's notes, well, his journal, he says, now after they became a couple, he said, now that I look back on it, she was very cute back then too. An 11-year-old, and he was a 19-year-old.
It was like he's getting all this creepy, nasty, inappropriate stuff from his father.
Nah, I'm so glad you mentioned his father. So back to after they shortly got married. Only 9 months into their marriage, they were evicted from their apartment that they were living together. Susan was working 2 jobs. Joshua not working a single job, completely losing his all of his drive and energy and likableness since before the marriage. As soon as he got married, like it's like a switch got flipped, and all of a sudden he's just douchebag again. So, and because of this, Joshua and Susan started living with his father, but also along with his 2 brothers. So they were in this house, and it was very cramped. And Susan and Joshua had to sleep on the couch. Newlyweds had to sleep on the couch. It was very, very not the
Best situation
yeah, not the best
or
situation.
living arrangement.
Right, right. Nothing you would think after you get married would be happening to you so soon after. But as Susan and Joshua lived in this house, his father became obsessed with his daughter-in-law. He was so in love with her. He would follow her around with a camcorder, using a small mirror to spy on her while she's in the bathroom. He would steal her underwear from the laundry, bag it and date it. He would take hair from her brush, bag it and date it. Take her uh, sensitive items from the trash, bag it and date it. He
I
would
wish you could see my face.
he would post
I'm
love songs.
so disgusted and horrified right now.
It's very horrifying. It's very horrifying, but it keeps getting worse.
Oh my God, this poor lady.
So poor, so such a poor lady. He would go online under a pseudonym and write love songs for Susan. And of course, he would go into her journal and read about her thoughts and what she wanted to go on, just so that he could try to fulfill what she wanted. He read a section in there saying how dark the house was, and he said in an interview later on that he would have, well, in his journal, that he would have sold the house and got a new one if she would have married him instead.
Oh my God, like the level of creepiness from him and Josh is just off the fucking charts.
Yeah, they're balanced. It's like it's just ricocheting off of both of these men.
I don't even see how she lived like this. Oh my God, this poor lady. I don't see how she could live like that.
Yeah, fortunately, it didn't last too much longer. They moved out of state, but this was only after Joshua's father confessed his love for Susan, who of course rejected him.
So, did his son know he was like stealing her underwear and hair and used feminine products and whatnot?
How open his father is in interviews, I would assume he knows because he was very just out in the open, like, yeah, Susan was sexually attracted to me. We were like messing around a little bit. It was of course received both ways very well. He was just going on like
Wow.
public interviews. Like there's footage of him saying these things. It is pretty wild.
but it took him confessing his quote unquote love to get his son to be like, okay, now we got to move.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So then in their new house, they began to start a family. And this is where Joshua's habits kind of also returned back in, since he had extremely poor credit and everything due to school and going through what he went through. He was using everything that Susan had, which could also have been a tie-in to why he married her in the first place. She was 19 years old. She didn't have any kind of, credit established to be ruined. So them marrying each other would put everything, what yours is mine, what mine is yours kind of situation. So in 2007, he filed for bankruptcy, declaring over $200,000 in debt. Susan soon after recorded a video of inside of the home, pretty much just stating everything, like like this was a very high end computer that he did himself. There's 3 hard drives in it. This is a very expensive RC card that was bought. This was a very this safe right here has some of our marriage documents and everything in it. Like just pretty much just going around on video showing what's there because her lawyer advised her to do so.
That's weird, but okay.
It was just in case anything was sold out of the way or like destroyed by him.
Oh, so like keeping a record for if something happened,
Yeah,
basically.
right.
Oh,
They both had 2 sons, Charles, who was born in 2005, and Braden, who was born in 2007. And so in 2009, we had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I say that because I didn't type that in correctly. But this is where it starts getting interesting. During that video, Susan quoted, I want it documented that there is extreme turmoil in our marriage. If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." So this was July 2008. The morning of December 6, 2009, Susan and boys went to church. A neighbor visited the home in the afternoon, leaving at around 5 p.m. This was the last time Susan was seen by someone other than the family. At first, the entire Powell family was reported missing the next day, but Josh's mom and sister went looking for the family and informed that the children had not been dropped off at daycare that morning. They called the police, and when they failed to make contact with Joshua and Susan, the police broke into the house, fearing that the family might have been victims of carbon monoxide poisoning. There was no one inside, but the police noticed 2 box fans blowing at a wet spot on the couch. Susan did not show up at her job on Monday morning either. Her purse, wallet, and ID were all found in the house. Her cell phone was later found in the family's minivan that Joshua had been using. So this is probably the most interesting part. Joshua claimed to have took his 2 sons on a camping trip at around midnight in the winter in Utah. His 4-year-old and 2-year-old.
that's what I was about to say. Who takes toddlers on a camping trip at midnight when it's the winter time?
No idea. And so on Monday, when Joshua got home at about 5, the police questioned him and the children. He claimed that he left Susan sleeping at home shortly after midnight on Sunday, like he left for Sunday night and took the 2 boys to Simpson Springs in western Utah. They asked him why did he take his sons camping on a Sunday night when he had work the next morning, and his excuse was, "Oh, I'm really bad with time. I thought it was Saturday."
What? That's the worst excuse. He thought it was Saturday, so he takes his kids camping in the winter at midnight, didn't take his wife, but took 2 toddlers.
Yep, you heard it here first, folks.
That makes 0 sense, absolutely 0 sense.
It makes no sense, and then his behavior thereafter is even more suspicious. He liquidated Susan's retirement accounts, canceled her regularly scheduled chiropractor sessions, withdrew his kids from daycare, and also I'm sure you know what this one is.
He cashed in her life insurance, or tried
Well,
to?
yeah, he tried to, but since she was missing and not deceased, he cannot. But her policy is worth 1.5 million.
Whoa.
Police interviewed Charlie, who confirmed that he was taken on a camping trip, but instead he said that his mom had gone with them and she did not return. So,
And that was the 4-year-old.
yeah. After that, a daycare teacher told the police that Charlie kept claiming that his mother was dead, the 4-year-old.
Wow, that's sad. That's horrible.
Yeah, it's quite terrible. But through all of this, of course, Joshua was the main suspect, like for obvious reasons.
Right, obviously, because that story was junk in the first place. Like, the
Yeah,
story is suspicious all around. And then why would you cancel preset appointments and drain her 401k? It's like you know she's not coming back.
yeah, exactly.
That's extremely suspicious for someone who his wife is missing.
Right. So a week later, Joshua got an attorney in connection with the investigation, and the police said that he grew increasingly uncooperative. A few days later, he took his sons to Puyallup and to stay with his dad for the holidays. By Christmas Eve, Joshua was considered a person of interest on the investigation. A couple weeks after that, Joshua returned back home with his brother to take his belongings, which kind of suggested that he was moving permanently in with his father.
Okay. I mean, he is the one who couldn't really keep a job and was financially struggling. So, him and 2 small children, I would guess moving in with his dad would be like the smarter decision.
Yeah, I
I
would think
mean,
so.
smarter financially, not smarter because why would you want your children influenced by a sack of crap like that?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. So, so a little bit later in 2010, a website, SusanPowell.org, was launched, and it had anonymous entries that defended Joshua as the victim of a smear campaign by Susan's family, his estranged sister, and the LDS Church. Additional posts also speculated that Susan's disappearance was connected to that of Stephen Coker, a former journalist who vanished the same week as Susan, and claiming that the two had run off to Brazil together. I'm not
I
too
knew you
sure.
were gonna say that. Like when you said they vanished in the same week, I was like, oh, so now he's gonna spin it that they just magically ran off together.
Yeah, but people believe that Joshua and his dad wrote these posts,
I believe
and
it too.
and then yeah, because they're pretty ridiculous, and considering how bad of a liar Joshua seems to be. In 2010, both men claimed that Susan had abandoned her family due to mental illness and that she left for another man. Susan's family, of course, rejected this, saying it is unsupported by any evidence.
Right. Was she under psychiatric care? Did
Nope,
she have any history of mental illness?
nope.
So he was basically trying to run his own smear campaign against his missing wife and make himself look like the victim.
Right, right.
What a
Like,
bag of sphincters.
Then, then a little bit after that, investigators seized Joshua's father's computer, and it came up 4,500 plus images of Susan taken without her knowledge.
Oh my gosh. 4,000?
4,000.
Like in that little time that they lived together?
Yeah.
He was basically stalking her. Oh, that is so creepy.
Yeah, I could imagine how that energy must have felt.
Oh my gosh. That's disgusting. This whole family is just, with the exception of Susan and her boys, like that whole family is gross and disgusting.
Mm-mm. It's crazy. So, a couple more things developed, of course. There was a Ford Taurus that belonged to Joshua's brother that was sold to a junkyard, and of course it's believed that Susan may have been in the trunk of that vehicle.
Oh, they never
Uh,
found it?
Anything they got from the car was proved, well, it was tested back and inconclusive.
Mm.
And then there was this possible grave site in the Topaz Mountains, and because there were signs of recent soil disturbance and shoveling, but after digging a few feet down, police were unable to find any remains. And of course,
Yeah, I don't know.
they ruled
Digging in the
out,
winter time, I don't think he would have been able to do that. Like the ground would have been too hard.
yeah, I think it would have been too hard too. Because what I hear is that Utah is not the warmest of places.
It's not all the time. Definitely not in the winter.
Naturally, relations between the Powells and Susan's family became increasingly hostile. A police raid was issued on Stephen's home in 2011, and Joshua and Stephen spoke out to major news outlets regarding journals that Susan had allegedly written about the relationship between Stephen and herself. So Joshua did know what his father was like saying and doing, but he's somehow twisted around that Susan was encouraging it.
Oh my gosh, that is like victim blaming at its finest. Oh my gosh, I hate both of these people.
Yeah, they um
Not Susan, Stephen and Joshua.
they um they published Susan's journal issues on the internet, but the judge demanded they be taken down, of course.
Thank goodness.
So this audio right here is from an interview with ABC in 2011 that Joshua took. This was August 25th, 2011.
What is the truth?
People who know me know that I'm a good dad. I work hard. I put my sons first. I was a good husband. I took care of my family.
And I see you're still wearing your wedding band.
Yeah,
You still love her?
yeah. I guess you could say that I still love her.
While Josh and his father, Stephen Powell, have been making parts of Susan's old journals public, claiming it provides possible reasons for her disappearance.
What do those journals tell you about Susan's life growing up?
Susan was very emotionally abused as a child. Her mother has she has a very angry personality. Her father is very manipulative.
Josh Powell claims that at times Susan was unstable, had even contemplated suicide at different points in her life.
She has walked out the front door in her underwear, started walking down the street. And at the time when all this stuff was happening, it was mortifying to me I've tried to protect her from doing things that I thought might embarrass her or our family in that respect, you know.
Josh says he thinks Susan may still be alive and wonders if she left him and their 2 young children for another man, a claim police will not substantiate.
Has she ever been unfaithful to you?
Never that I know of.
Then why do you think that she would just run off with another man?
She's a very sexual person.
Josh Powell's father, Stephen Powell, then goes on to make the bizarre claim that he's had a sexual relationship with his daughter-in-law.
Susan was very, very sexual with me. She was very flirtatious. I mean, I'm her father-in-law, and she would do a lot of things that I mean, she was just, she did it, I did. I mean, we interacted in a lot of sexual ways because Susan enjoys doing that.
Do you think a part of you started falling in love with Susan?
That's pretty likely, yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say so. And there's no question in my mind that the feelings were mutual.
Despite his father's claims, Josh is still holding on to hope.
You think she's still alive?
At times. It's a roller coaster.
Okay, first of all, my first problem with what he said is everybody knows I was a good husband. Was is past tense, meaning you're not a good husband to her any longer because she's not there to be a wife.
Right.
Second, he was like, when she said, "What's the truth?" He never said, "I didn't kill my wife. I didn't do anything to her. I don't know where she's at." Like, he didn't deny anything.
Yeah, he went into her mental state.
Right, and saying that, oh, she was just so overly sexual, which I personally don't believe. I mean, if she got into her first relationship at 19 and
Right.
stayed and married that person, I highly doubt that.
Yeah, seriously.
It's not like, she was married 3 times by the time she was 19 and, he found her walking the streets of Utah.
Yeah. Not even a month later, Joshua's father was arrested.
Oh, thank goodness. It took long enough. I mean, he was a creep from decades before, but
Would you like to know his charges?
Was it sexually harassing someone? Because I could definitely see that.
Voyeurism and child pornography.
Ugh. So he was secretly watching people and child pornography. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I hope they just throw him in the middle of a jail with a whole bunch of people who hate pedophiles and just walk away and let whatever happen happen.
Let whatever happens happen. So naturally, Susan's father filed for custody of the children the day after Stephen was arrested. When
As he should have.
when the charges were like posted publicly. The Washington court eventually granted her father temporary custody of the boys, ruling that Joshua would have to move out of his dad's house if he wanted to regain custody. Joshua rented a house in South Hill, Washington, but authorities later alleged that he had never moved into that house, just making it appear that he satisfied the court instructions so that he can get his children back.
There's no telling what was happening to those poor kids either.
No, not at all. Later the months of 2011, I'll probably say like November, December, a series of court-ordered evaluations were made to Joshua. The evaluations were by James Manley, and he determined that Joshua had adequate parenting skills, a steady employment history, and no criminal record or history of domestic violence. However, Manley also raised issues concerning the ongoing criminal investigations, Joshua's failure to admit normal personal shortcomings, his overbearing behavior with his sons, and his persistent defensiveness and paranoia. The initial recommendation was for Joshua to have visitation with his sons several times a week supervised by a social worker. In the last week of January 2012, the Utah police discovered about 400 images of simulated child pornography, bestiality, and incest on Joshua's computer. The images were not illegal because they were hand drawn or cartoonish 3D formats, but they caused a great concern to Manley, the investigator.
That's
Particularly,
still disgusting.
oh yeah, absolutely.
The fact that you're going to sit and hand draw or digitally create 400 pieces of pornography involving children and animals. That Powell family was just deeply disturbed.
Yeah, oh yeah, so much so. And so of course like this right here was just like let the other shoe drop, and so he was going to lose custody of his children. So a couple days later, February 5th, 2012, the social worker came to take his sons for a supervised visit to Joshua, to the home he bought in South Hill. So as they opened the door, Joshua grabbed the children, wouldn't let her in the door, locked the door, and then the house exploded, killing Joshua and his two children. This was all while she was on a 911 call.
So he grabbed he like opened the door like he was going to let him in, grabbed the kids, closed the door on her, and the house blew up while she was talking to 911.
Yes.
Why were they having visitations at his house? Why is there not like a room in like the
Public.
detention center or the jail or the courthouse where they have visitations?
I do not know.
I hate this story so much.
I hate it too. These poor children were in the middle of this psychopath on his whatever he was doing, and then their crazy, perverted grandfather, who also, when notified that his son and two grandsons have died, he didn't seem upset, but was angry towards the authorities who notified him.
He probably knew what Josh was planning, and for him to kill like these little babies instead of just letting them live with their other grandparents. Oh my God. Oh, I hate this guy so much. I hope he survived and just laid in the rubble and died a slow, horrible death.
I really hope that too. Of course, this didn't ever solidify whether Susan was alive or dead. So, a year later, his brother committed suicide. And
The one whose car they thought she might have been in.
yes.
Mm.
And but before this though, he was questioned by police about the car, and he was evasive every time with why he left the car at the junkyard.
Yeah, that's
Authorities
sketchy.
authorities believe that Joshua and his brother were accomplices in the murder of Susan. But the case was still open, and then in 2013 they closed the case on her file on her disappearance because there was no trace at all where she was.
Right, and I guess like the real only viable suspect was dead.
Joshua was dead, but his father was still alive, and his father had to have a play in this somewhere. So after, in 2017, his father was released from prison, but after serving 7 years total, but he died a year later in
Thank
Tacoma.
goodness. But how can they close the case when no one still knows what happened to her? Like where her body is, like, because I feel like if she was alive, this story would have brought her back. Like her children dying would have brought her out of hiding.
Right, right.
And
There's
I don't even think she really would have left them with him, knowing how her father-in-law was. I don't even think she really would have left her kids, knowing that they could be, you know, under his influence.
one more little tidbit. Joshua's mom and his younger sister had sought to have Susan declared legally dead to collect her life insurance. But ultimately, her parents gained control of the estate.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh my gosh, this whole Powell family, I can't even think of a description strong enough to declare how horrible they are.
They are so horrible.
Oh my gosh. That was the worst story I think I've ever heard.
Yeah, it is bummer city for sure. I'm a little
And
drained from it personally.
my story isn't even that bad compared to yours. Now
Well,
you probably won't be speechless because that was just a train wreck of horrors.
yeah, it was a lot going on.
But I guess on the bright side, well, no, there's no bright side to this one. I will, however, tell you the case of the Beaumont children.
Belmont or Beaumont?
Beaumont.
Okay, I was getting some Castlevania vibes there.
No, now Jane Beaumont, born September 10th, 1956. Arna, which I like that name, I think is cute. Arna Beaumont, born November 11th, 1958. And Grant Beaumont, born July 12, 1961, were three Australian siblings who disappeared from Glenelg Beach near Adelaide, South Australia, January 26, 1966. Now, I know I normally do like more, I don't want to say recent cases, but like cases maybe more within my time of living, like, within my age range. But this one was so like crazy that I just had to do
You
it
just
because I know
couldn't
that
ignore it.
you would be like, whoa. But now I'm like, whoa, after hearing your story.
See how that
But
happens?
I see it, the tables turned. Now, at the time of their disappearance, they were aged 9, that was Jane, 7, Arna, and 4 years old. Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont lived with their parents, Grant, who went by Jim Beaumont, a former serviceman and a driver for a suburban taxi, and Nancy Beaumont at 109 Harding Street in Somerton Park, a suburb of Adelaide, not far from Glenelg Beach. Glenelg Beach was a popular spot. Now, on January 25th, in the mid, okay, this is, oh my gosh, I was about to say this can't be right because it says in the midst of a summer heat wave, but I forgot because they're on the other side of the equator.
Hmm.
Our winter is their summer.
Yeah, that's pretty
Isn't that
interesting.
crazy? Oh my gosh, that's
It
so
is.
weird. Okay, so oh my gosh, January is summertime to them. Oh my gosh, that's so weird. Okay, so in the midst of a summer heat wave, Jim Beaumont dropped the children off at Glenelg Beach before heading off on a 3-day sales trip to Snowtown. Jane, the eldest child, was considered responsible enough to care for her two younger siblings, and they returned safely that day. So, nothing weird about that. The next day, on the morning of January 26, 1966, which was Australia Day, the children asked their mother to visit the beach again. Now, Australia Day is the official national holiday of Australia. It's celebrated annually on January 26th, and it marks the anniversary of the 1788 arrival of the first fleet of British ships at Port Jackson, New South Wales, and the raising of the flag of Great Britain at Sydney Cove by Governor Arthur Phillip. In present day Australia, celebrations reflect the diverse society and landscape of the nation and are marked by community and family events, reflections on Australian history, official community awards, and citizenship ceremonies welcoming new members of the Australian community. Now, we all know how much I love Australians. So if next Australia Day 2021, I could become an Australian citizen, I really like that. Australian listeners, I'm still waiting on somebody to come rescue me.
Key, the important thing is, what did you do during that wildfire recently?
I was very devastated by the wildfires because so many animals, so many people, it was just such devastation to the whole country of or continent of Australia. It was just mind blowing.
I'm
So
glad you corrected
hopefully
that part.
any little bit that I did helped in even the most smallest way, because it's so beautiful there. Like, it's just so, I guess because it's so far away, it just seems like such a great place to go, that it being destroyed to that level, it just really hurt my heart. So now, as it was too hot to walk, they took a 5-minute 3-kilometer bus ride from their home to the beach. So the beach was actually super close. They caught the 8:45 bus and were expected to return home on the noon bus. Nancy Beaumont became worried, however, when the children did not return on either the 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock buses. And when Jim Beaumont returned home early from his trip, it was around 3 o'clock, he immediately drove to the crowded beach. Unable to locate them, he returned and they together searched the streets and visited friends' houses. Now, around 5:30 p.m., they went to the Glenelg police station to notify them of the disappearance. Now, police investigating the case found several witnesses who had seen the children in Collie Reserve near the beach in the company of a tall, blonde, thin-faced man in his mid-30s. He had like a suntan complexion and was like thin to athletic build. And he was also wearing swim trunks. The children were playing with him and appeared relaxed and seemed to be enjoying themselves. The man also approached one of the witnesses, asking if anyone had been near their belongings, as there was money missing from his clothing. Now, the man went off to change while the children waited for him. The group was seen walking together away from the beach sometime later, which the police estimated to be around 12:15. Now, the Beaumonts described their children, particularly Jane, who was the oldest, as shy. For them to be playing so confidently with a stranger, it seemed out of character. Investigators theorized that the children had perhaps met the man during a previous visit or visits and had grown to trust him. Arna once told her mother that Jane had, quote, got a boyfriend down the beach, and Nancy thought she meant like a playmate and took no further notice until after the disappearance, which I can understand. I mean, your 7-year-old teasing a 9-year-old about maybe playing with a boy from her class or something like that and saying it's her boyfriend, that
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
seem too weird, especially at the beach during the summertime. That wouldn't cause alarm bells or anything anything like that. So I can understand how Nancy just kind of dismissed it as like maybe, like teasing a sibling and, you know, probably just thought it was a classmate or some boy that lived in the neighborhood. Now, this remark, which seemed insignificant at the time, it does support the investigators' theory in hindsight. So, a shopkeeper at nearby Wenzel's Bakery also reported that Jane had bought pastries and a meat pie with a £1 note. Police viewed this as further evidence that they had been with another person for two reasons. First, the shopkeeper knew the children well from previous visits and reported that they never purchased a meat pie before. And the children's mother had only given them 6 shillings and 6 pence, enough for their bus fare and lunch, and not a £1 note. So police believed it had been given to them by somebody else. And from what I understand, like the difference between the 6 shillings and 6 pence and a £1 note would be like if you gave somebody like $5 and then they went and paid for a meat pie with a $20 bill.
Huh.
So it was like a large amount of money that their mother would not have given them. So, according to an initial statement, the children were seen walking alone at about 3 p.m. away from the beach along Jetty Road in the general direction of their home. The witness was the neighborhood postman that knew the children well, and his statement was regarded as reliable. He said the children were holding hands and laughing in the main street. This was the last confirmed sighting of the children. The postman contacted police 2 days after his initial statement and said that he thought he saw them in the morning, not in the afternoon, as he has previously said. Several months later, a woman reported that on the night of the disappearance, a man accompanied by 2 girls and a boy entered a neighboring house that she had believed to be empty. Later, she had seen the boy walking alone along a lane where he was pursued and roughly caught by the man. The next morning, the house appeared to be deserted again, and she saw neither the man nor the children again. Now, police couldn't figure out why she failed to report this information earlier, like the day after they disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, other reported sightings of the children continued for about a year after their disappearance. The case also attracted international attention, and on November 8th, 1966, Gerard Croisset, which I know I said his name completely incorrectly, a parapsychologist and psychic from the Netherlands, was brought to Australia, causing a media frenzy. His search for the children proved unsuccessful, with his story changing from day to day and offering no clues. He identified a site in a warehouse near the children's home in which he believed the children's bodies had been buried. At the time of the disappearance, it had been a building site, and he said he believed their bodies were buried under new concrete inside the remains of an old brick kiln. The
That would be
property
awful.
owners, it would be awful. Now, the property owners were reluctant to excavate on the basis of a psychic's claim, which I, completely understand. But soon they bowed to public pressure, and the publicity raised $40,000 to have the building demolished. But no remains or any evidence linking to any of the Beaumont family were found. Now, in 1996, the same building was undergoing partial demolition, and the owners allowed for a full search of the site. Once again, no trace of the children was found. Now, about 2 years after the disappearance, the Beaumont parents received 2 letters supposedly written by Jane and another by a man who said he was keeping the children. The envelope showed a postmark of Dandenong, Victoria. The brief notes describe a relatively pleasant existence and refer to the man who was keeping them. Police believed at the time that the letters could quite likely have been authentic after comparing them with other written letters from Jane or by Jane. So the letter from the man said he had appointed himself guardian of the children and was willing to hand them back to their parents. In the letter, a meeting place was established. The Beaumont parents, followed by a detective, drove to the designated place, but nobody showed up. It was sometime later that a third letter, also supposedly from Jane, was delivered. It said that the man had been willing to return them, but when he realized a detective was also there, he decided that the Beaumonts had betrayed his trust and that he would keep the children.
No way he saw that investigator detective dude. No way.
There were no further letters. Now, in 1992, new forensic examinations of the letters showed that they were a hoax. Fingerprint technology had improved, and the author of the letter was identified as a 41-year-old man who had been a teenager at the time and written the letters as a joke.
No way.
How? I mean, I know teenagers are horrible people. How horrible of a person would you have to be to even think that's remotely funny?
Yeah, how can that be on your conscience? And just, I don't know, how can you live with yourself after something like that? That's crazy. It's horrid.
Right. And if they had just closed the case and not even tried to like re-examine this once the technology got better, they would have never even known. Like their parents would have thought that it was their fault that they didn't get their kids back.
Right, right. It's like we betrayed his trust, like so now it was our fault.
Now, because of the time that had elapsed, he was not charged with any offense. In November 2013, oh, were you going to say something?
Still would have kicked his ass though.
I know, like somebody should have did something. Cause that's horrible. Don't, oh my God, don't do that. Don't be a dick. In November 2013, excavation was initiated in the back of a North Plimpton factory that had previously belonged to one possible suspect in the case, Harry Phipps, and further excavation at a slightly different location on the site was undertaken in February 2018. The excavations were based on 2 men reporting that as boys, they had been paid to dig a hole in that area around the time of the disappearance, and geophysical testing had identified anomalous disturbed soil. Animal bones were found, but that's all. Now, there were several murders that were suspected, or several murderers that were suspected of abducting children, including Bevan Spencer von Einem, who was sentenced to life in prison in 1984 for the murder of 15-year-old Richard Kelvin, who was the son of Adelaide newsreader Rob Kelvin. Arthur Stanley Brown, who was charged in 1998 with the murder of sisters Judith and Susan McKay in Townsville, Queensland. James O'Neill, who was serving life in prison in 1975 for the murder of a 9-year-old in Tasmania, had told a station owner in the Kimberley and several other acquaintances that he was responsible for the disappearance of the Beaumont children. Later, he said in an interview that he was in Melbourne at the time, so it couldn't have been him. In 2007, a Melbourne newspaper called The Age suggested that the Beaumont children may have been killed by Derek Ernest Percy. He was in prison for the 1969 murder of Yvonne Toohey. The Age alleged that evidence gathered by cold case investigators indicated that he was a likely suspect for a number of unsolved child murders, including the Beaumont children. Alan Anthony Monroe, a businessman and former scoutmaster who had pled guilty in 2015 to 10 child sex offenses dating back to 1962. And he
10.
Yeah, I feel like it was probably in the hundreds going back to 1962,
Yeah.
and he was only sentenced to 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
And finally, Harry Phipps, who I mentioned was the factory owner and also a member of Adelaide's social elite, came to attention as a possible suspect after publication of a book, The Satin Man, Uncovering the Mystery of the Missing Beaumont Children, and that was published in 2013. Now, the book did not name the identity of the Satin Man, but Phipps's son identified him soon after as the Satin Man and possible murderer. Phipps bore a striking resemblance to the police artist's impression of the man seen taking the children or talking to the children on the beach. He was wealthy and known to be in the habit of giving out £1 notes. Phipps was later alleged to have pedophilic tendencies and lived only 300 meters away from Glenelg Beach. Now, in 2007, Phipps' son Hayden, who was 15 at the time of the disappearance, came forward to researchers and claimed that he had seen the children in his father's yard that day. However, Phipps had died in 2004. Now, the Beaumont case resulted in one of the largest police investigations in Australian criminal history and remains one of Australia's most infamous cold cases, even after this many decades. The kidnapping was also viewed by many social commentators as a significant event in the evolution of Australian society, causing a large number of people to change the way they supervised their children at the time. It was never publicly suggested that the children should not have been allowed to travel or be at the beach unsupervised, or that the parents were in any way negligent, simply because Australian society felt that this was safe and acceptable. So, in today's society, that would never happen. You don't even let your kids go outside in the front yard.
No,
But, back in the early 60s, it was okay for 3 young kids to go to the beach by themselves. It was just, a safer time, supposedly.
That's such a shame. That is so terrible. That things like this had to happen for, people to get worried and protective, and kids not have the same fun as their parents used to have when they talk about them being a kid,
Right. Because I'm pretty sure this was now you could not just send your kids to the beach. If you were not going to be able to go, your kids could not go.
Yeah, so the daddy going on his trip and then the mom being busy, the kids would have been stuck at home bored. But I guess that's what would have happened for them to, remain safe and sound.
Now, the Beaumonts received widespread sympathy from the Australian public. They remained at their Somerton Park home, and Nancy Beaumont in particular held hope that her children would return and stated in interviews that it would be dreadful if the children returned home and did not find their parents waiting for them. The couple later divorced and lived separately away from the public attention that followed them for decades. They sold their home and were reported to have accepted the truth that you know that the truth may never be discovered. Now, Nancy Beaumont died in Adelaide on September 16th, 2019, so not that long ago, um, in a nursing home at age 92. But Jim Beaumont, who's also in his 90s, continues to reside in Adelaide, and neither one had any additional children.
Man, that's so sad.
Now, January 2018, the Premier of South Australia, Jay Weatherill, said that South Australian police have never given up on the case, and the state government also continues to maintain a $1 million reward for information relating to the children's disappearance.
If that doesn't make you talk, I don't know what will.
Right. Probably anybody who is involved may not even be living anymore at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The only one with the
Yes.
information was the guy's son, but that's it, as far as it goes.
Right. And the guy had died like 3 years before the son even said anything. And then if the guy was in his 30s back in, like the early 60s, he would also be
He'll be in his 90s.
like 80s or 90s. But it's sad, like all three children just disappeared from the beach and nobody knows what happened to them.
Man, it's not right. It's so not right.
It is not. So, these were two awfully awful stories today.
Yes, both very hard to digest.
Yes, I think when missing people like are not located, it's always a hard story, but these were like children, and then like yours was a mother, and then her children also suffered horrible consequences. It was just a lot.
Yeah, it was so much, honestly.
So,
Well,
how are you going to bring this back up? Because I blame you.
well, the U.S. economy may be recovering with some stock news kind of stuff going on. Like, Apple is like putting their stock into 4 different quarters, so it's not as expensive to get now, and so that should help the economy, right? Something like that.
Does this mean my 401k is going to rebound and go back up?
It's possible. It is possible. But a lot of big finance people are very excited about the Apple like split thing.
Yeah, I've
So
heard
that's really cool
Apple
for the
stock
U.S.
is
economy.
was very expensive in the past.
Yeah, oh
Maybe
yeah.
now, like, regular people. Well, I wonder, how do stocks work? Like, how do you buy a piece of a stock? Like, is there only a limited number of stocks per company?
So like I think this, of course, is very uneducated, even though I worked in the world of finance briefly. Um, so back in the day, a share used to be a percentage of the company. Well,
Mm,
Apple is a $1 trillion company, so even $100 is 0.0000000 some percent of the company. So
wow.
so I think you can keep buying as many stocks as you want to, and then sell them like back to Apple pretty much, like when you want to pull out of the exchange. But like if I had $100 company and I had $1 stock, then that means that anyone who buys that stock owns a percent of my company.
Okay, so it's basically based on like revenue, kind of like what your company's worth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's based on that, but also it just fluctuate because of the market. like the Nasdaq and the Dow pretty much grant every other stock their either upbringings or downfalls. Because like Apple went up, let's see, Apple went up like 10%. Yeah, they went up 10% just today.
That's a lot for a
That's a,
trillion.
that's a lot now.
So man, I probably couldn't even buy like I'd have to buy like a piece of a stock. So like me and like 300 other people own 1% of it.
Right.
Oh, well,
So
that was very informative.
yeah, I hope I made it understandable for listeners out there, and listeners that are educated in this are probably screaming at my explanation of it. But you know what? Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And that is what I'm doing to bring up our session now because US economy going back up. So yeah.
Well, I have learned something. I am happy with that. And if anyone does not like V's explanation of how stocks work, you can email us at we shouldn't talk about this at gmail.com and explain to us how it does work.
And while you're there, be sure to drop your suggestion for our next episode.
Yes, please drop a suggestion. We would love some. It gets kind of hard not redoing cases that other podcasts have done over and over and over and over. So we'd love something maybe new or lesser known. If there are like big cases that you just want to hear the way we tell it, let us know. You can also, hit us up on Instagram at WSTAT_pod and Twitter WSTAT_pod. And also the We Shouldn't Talk About This Facebook group. Everyone's invited. That's where all the cool kids are.
Everyone's invited. Come sit at the table with us and hear these stories that we shouldn't talk about.
Yes, and maybe learn something like I did today.
Okay, that's the pleasure of life. Learning new things every single day.
That is. And now that we're on a high note, I guess I'll just say, well, I'm Key.
And I'm V.
And this has been We Shouldn't Talk About This.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.